lymphatic system. I told you that a lot of times. Here's this picture over here. I like this picture. So this one always reminds me of, I always never forget when I went on a cruise. Um, I was the only one, my Baba and I, we weren't married then, but he he got me angry, so I joined my friends on a cruise. I was the only one who went there by myself. So the last stop was the Florida Keys, and then they had their boyfriends, and they said, "Are you gonna be okay?" I said, "Yeah." It was so nice there, so nice. I enjoyed it so much. It was like a town center where they had so many things that will entertain you, and I was just so entertained. And then I saw, because it was a common stop for all ships. So then they were, blowing the horn in the ship, and people were waving, and I said bye, and until I realized that was my ship. So you see, it won't wait for you. It will move when it's time to go. It's time to go. So I missed it. It's the same thing here. That's why I like this picture. Remember what I told you? So there, blood pressure push. Don't forget, that's why we need blood pressure. You see, uh, we did talk about systolic hypertension, diastolic hypertension, right? And even though hypertension is so scary, it's a silent killer. It's silent because even though your blood pressure is high, the important thing is there's perfusion. As long as you get your nutrients, you get your oxygen, everything to your tissues, you don't feel it. You're still okay. When there's no pressure, that's when you feel it. You pass out right away. So between hypertension and hypotension, which one is more dangerous? Hypotension. Because when there's no pressure, there's absolutely no way to push your nutrients. You pass out, you can die very quickly. Whereas hypertension, if the pressure is just high, but you're still nourishing, so you will, that's why you can die silently. Silent killer. Now, let's look at this one. I told you, yes, we pushed fluid out, and there's nutrition, like people who have hypoalbuminemia or protein deficiency. There's not enough protein to pull the fluid back. But I said that this is a closed circuit. There's got to be a way to pick up the leftovers, the slowpokes, and return them back. That's the job of your lymphatic system. So I remember you wrote down in your notes that the cardiovascular system is a one-way closed circuit. The lymphatic system is another system, but it is just one way. This is closed circuit. The cardiovascular is closed circuit. This one is not. It's open-ended. The pick up, return. That's its job, to pick up the leftover and return back to the circulation. You understand? It's an open system. So the names of vessels only can be either capillary, artery, vein. You cannot call any other vessel by any other name. One more time. You don't see it. See? It's just one way. There it is. See? It's just this one. It's just returning. It's picking up and returning. So look at the blood vessels. You only have a capillary and vein. You don't have arteries. You have a lymphatic capillary, lymphatic vein. You don't have lymphatic artery. It is not a closed circuit. It's one way. So the lymphatic system is another body circulation system, which the function of which is to pick up, see, return the leftover back to the bloodstream to promote fluid balance. Another important function of your lymphatic system is for fat absorption. So you remember that fat is insoluble in water. We know that, right? Fat and water don't mix. And your blood is mainly water. So the fat that we absorb from our diet cannot directly enter your blood. If it did that, it will separate right away and cause a clot. So what happens is, I'm going to go back to this picture over here. This is how we pick up our fat from our lymphatic capillaries. And while they're in the lymphatic capillaries, veins, lymphatic veins, this is where they get converted to a water-soluble form called lipoprotein. Are you familiar with HDL, LDL, the good cholesterol, the bad? This is where it happens. So that by the time it joins my circulation, it is now soluble, a soluble form of fat. Here, it's fat. It's called fatty acid. Fatty acid is not soluble in water. So here, while it's flowing here, the fatty acid gets combined with a protein, lipoprotein, called HDL, LDL. Here's where it happens. Then you dump it here. Now, it's no longer fatty acid. It's called lipoprotein, soluble now in the blood because the blood is mainly water. You understand? Now, look at this. I want you to look at this lymphatic capillary. The lymphatic capillary is the one that picks up, right? Capillary is always the one with openings. Look at the openings of a lymphatic capillary. Compared with the blood capillary and the lymphatic capillary, the lymphatic capillary is actually much, much leakier. It allows bigger substances. See, it has like shingles and it's free to open like that. Okay? So, and let me ask you, I want you to know these terms. So here, inside, it's called blood, yes? You understand, right? And blood is made up of the plasma. You need to remember the terms. And then the cells or the formed elements. Here, you call it tissue fluid or interstitial fluid, right? Tissue fluid or interstitial fluid. Once that fluid enters your lymphatics, you are going to call it lymph. Okay? So you should be familiar with these terms. I said that the lymphatic capillaries are very leaky. They're wide openings like shingles. Like the split ends, very leaky. So, let me ask you, have you ever had like a minor boo-boo? A minor script? What do you think? If you've taken up microbiology, I know you learned that you have, for every one human cell, there's 10 germs, 10 bacterial cells. So every time you have a minor cut, do you agree that germs, the bacteria, has already entered your body? It's already part of your tissue fluid. You agree? And that germs, because this is very leaky, is very quick to enter my lymphatics. Do you follow? So that means, where's that going to end? Where's the lymphatic going to end? Look at this picture. It's going to end in my circulation. Right? So, it was very leaky. It's very easy. It reminds me, here comes the story again of when I was doing my residency in the Philippines. You know that it's very, very dirty. And when it rains, there's like a flood. So one time it rained, we had a flood, and they canceled classes, no work. So I wanted to go home. I was in the hospital 2 days, so I wanted to go home. And my home was from here to Bridgeport exit. So I walked because I wanted to go home. And the water was up to here. But I didn't care. I knew that when I get home, I'm just going to take a shower. But as you walk, you saw it's so dirty. There's trash floating all over, dead cockroaches. And I was like, oh. And then when I got home to take a bath, I realized that I had a big boo-boo. Right? I forgot that I had a big boo-boo. So can you imagine all the germs that entered? How did I get protected? It's common. If you cut your nails so much to the point that it's burning, don't you think that there's germs there? It's very easy. Very easy for germs to jump in here because this is very leaky. The lymphatic capillaries are much, much leakier. So here comes the third function of the lymphatic system, which is fourth, which is defense. So look at this picture. All along, look at my lymphatic capillaries. Yes, it picked up germs. But all along, I have these lymph nodes, which filters the lymph. What do you think of the three types of cells that you find in your blood vessels? What cell do you think will be present here in your lymph nodes? Very good. The white blood cells. See, that's why a normal WBC count in the blood is low. They're deployed. And look at how much God loves us. We have about 500 lymph nodes. Most of them located above the heart. But look at, there's one on the way up. Look at all those lymph nodes all the way to the circulation. So if I picked up some germs here, you have lymph nodes that will try to fill, like your Brita water filter, right? So you filter out the dirt. So you're drinking filtered water. That's the same thing here. See? Look at. I want you to take a look at this lymph node, a typical lymph node. You see this one? See? So these are your afferent vessels, meaning this is the lymph that's going this way, and then it's going to pass. It will be filtered by my white blood cells here. And this one is going to go back to the heart. So this is afferent. This is efferent. Do you notice anything about the number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then how many efferent? Just only 2. Is there an advantage? What do you think will this cause? Is slow. Yes, very good. And it will, don't you think so? There will be traffic, right? There's only 2 lanes leaving, but there's many lanes for the traffic to come in. So there will be a traffic jam here. That will give your white blood cells time to really figure out which of you does not feel, I'm going to kill you. You're not supposed to, I wish, So to prevent them from moving on, you see how much these lymph nodes are very important, okay? But because this lymph is very leaky, this is also, the lymphatic capillaries, this is also a very good way for cancer to spread. You agree? You always have cancer with, let's say, the skin or whatever. How do they spread? Through your lymphatics. Because this is so leaky. Cancer cells jump, and cancer cells have this property of being sneaky. White blood cells, they're able to mutate so that the white blood cells don't recognize them. They let them through. And so you notice people with cancer, don't they take out lymph nodes for staging? And so if the lymph nodes have been taken out, like my mother is a breast cancer survivor, no blood pressure taken here. Why? Because the lymph return is now compromised here. That means you have cut, right? You took out the lymph nodes, meaning you cut the lymph chain, the channel. So the lymph return is compromised here. Blood will still return. It's just going to be slower. You cut the channel. It will still I still have blood flow there. But if I do blood pressure, I squeeze, I'm pushing out the fluid into my tissues. I have I have lymph that can bring, remember, to return it back to the slowpokes, return it back to the circulation. But now I compromise that. So that's why people who have had their lymph nodes taken out, we do not take blood pressure on that part of the body. Otherwise, they're going to suffer a lymphedema. It's called lymphedema, and it can be painful. Will it go away? Yes. First, it's swollen. It will go away. It will just take longer. Okay. Now you understand. You have lymph nodes all over the body. Now, do you understand? If you have an infection, do you think you have swollen lymph nodes? Right? It's called lymphadenopathy. That's why they feel that, oh, your lymph nodes, you have lymphadenopathy. You may have some infection. What does a lymphadenopathy mean? I think it means that you have a healthy immune system that's trying to contain the infection. So you have your lymphatic system is made up of lymphatic vessels. It's called capillaries and lymphatic veins that contain lymph. It also is made up of organs. The major organs are your lymph nodes that filter lymph, okay, right here. The other major organ is called the spleen. So let's look at this picture again, okay? I got germs, but then the germs were very sneaky. It was able to evade your defenses, your white blood cells in the lymph nodes, and it entered my circulation. Are you what you call, what do they say? SOL? No. You still have the spleen. You see? So the germ still was able to come here. And then look at the heart will pump the blood, the aorta. The first organ is the spleen that will get that blood. So in case there's germs there in the blood, the spleen can filter out the blood. Filter any germs out of your circulation. And I remember asking that, okay? So the spleen is another lymphatic organ, but remember this, it filters blood and not lymph. So what's the similarity between lymph node and spleen? They're both lymphatic organs. Their similarity ends there. Because the spleen filters blood, the lymph nodes filters lymph. Those are two different fluids that they monitor. You understand? Now, a lymphatic tissue, we said that the function of your lymphatic system is for defense. So, an organ, it's called lymphatic organ because it's nice. You can see an anatomical shape. But anywhere in the body where you have a collection or two or more cells is a tissue. So you will have lymphatic tissue anywhere in the body. If I have a boo-boo here, I predict there's lots of white blood cells that's here. So what do I call that collection of white blood cells? Lymphatic tissue. It's not an organ. It's a tissue. You understand? Like my tonsils is an example of lymphatic tissue. Your tonsils. There's a collection of white blood cells there. Under your, look at, right here, your GI tract, where there's, like in the ileum, the last part before the colon begins, where poop is, I know that there's a collection of white blood cells right under the epithelium. So what do you call, this is white blood cells. They are immune in function, lymphatic, but there's no actual anatomical shape or boundary. I call it lymphatic tissue. The lymph node is a lymphatic organ. Okay? So in other words, in addition to the actual organ, you have immune defense all over your body. Wherever there's epithelium, I predict there will be lots of lymphatic tissue. You will see the lymphatic tissue, these Peyer's patches, when we take up our small intestine digestive system. You familiar with the appendix? People can die from maybe ruptured appendix. The appendix is actually not a GI organ. The appendix is a lymphatic tissue. It has no digestive functions. The job of the appendix is to monitor, like a police patrol. It has white blood cells. The germs, if there's germs, they prevent germs from overwhelming and causing an infection. You understand? Okay? So, the, oh, let's look at this one. I remember asking this in the test. You look at this picture, okay? This was asked in the lecture test and even in the final exam. Lymph, so here it's called lymph, and it will return the blood, it will return the lymph back to the circulation into a vein. This is the subclavian vein. Why is it more efficient? You don't see lymph being returned into an artery. No. Lymph always joins your cardiovascular through a vein, the subclavian vein. Why vein and not artery? Yes, very good. And also because of, that's very good, but also because of pressure. Okay? So we know that that's why we draw blood from veins, right? And not from arteries, because arteries have high pressure. So it's just going to be very difficult to get blood there. But from the veins, very easy. That's the same thing, because this is low pressure, low resistance. It's not going to resist the fluid that's going to be returned here. Can you imagine if the lymph is going to be returned here? This has high pressure. So it's going to resist, it's going to be difficult to return anything here. Do you understand? This is low pressure, low resistance. So we deliver lymph here. So do you understand so far? There is a chance, please look at this lymphatic capillaries, that another very important anatomical feature of lymphatic capillaries, which your blood capillaries don't have, is this anchoring filament. This is nothing but uh, uh, very fine connective tissue that will anchor your capillary to your tissues. This is very important because a capillary, we know that capillaries are only one cell layer thick, and so this lymphatic capillary compared to the blood capillary, do you agree? Because the blood capillary, so you see, there's your artery, your capillary right here, vein back to the heart. Just going to make it thin. So the capillary. Do you agree? Because the capillary is continuous with the artery and the vein in your cardiovascular system, there is no chance for the capillaries here to collapse, right? It's just, it stays open. It's just one big tube. But here in your lymphatics, there is a chance for collapse here because it's open-ended. There's nothing that keeps it open. Does it make sense? You compare this, open. Okay, it's just one long tube. See? No chance for collapse. But this has a chance for collapse, especially if you have edema here. You have lots of fluid here, interstitial fluid. You want to return it there, but the fluid here can squeeze this shut. So when the interstitial fluid here, the pressure here increases, here is where the anchoring filaments are very important. When the interstitial fluid pressure is high, write down in your notes. when the interstitial fluid pressure is high, the anchoring filaments will prevent collapse of the lymphatic capillaries. They keep your lymphatic capillaries open and still be able to admit all of the fluid that accumulated in your interstitial area. Remember that for your next lecture test. So the anchoring filaments help to keep your lymphatic capillaries open, stay open when the interstitial fluid pressure is high. Another way to say it is the anchoring filaments prevent collapse of your lymphatic capillaries when the interstitial fluid pressure is high. So what happens if we're not able to return the fluid back? That's when you have edema. That's why some books or some doctors or in the hospital, they're very, not able, but they want to make sure that they include the word lymphedema to remind us that it's really the lymphatic. Okay? You have any questions so far? So the next part of this chapter talks about our body defenses. This is the other function of the lymphatic system. It provides immune function, body defense. As far as defense is concerned, we actually have three types of defense. First line, second line, and third line of defense. Okay? So, just like a wrapper, a gift, right? The first line is the wrapper. Then the second line maybe is the tissue paper that's holding the present. And then the third line is the actual present. Okay? So, this is how we protect ourselves. The first line is your intact skin and intact skin, intact lining, everything. So your skin, the vaginal epithelium, the lining of the stomach, here, every lining intact, that's your first line of defense. Plus its secretion. You remember acid mantle, the skin, the sweat, that's first line of defense, right? Your tears, your ciliated epithelium, the mucus is first line of defense. The acid pH of your stomach, first line of defense, right? If you ate maybe some germs, the acid hopefully is going to kill that. Then the pH in the vaginal area, first line of defense. You know that if there's a change in the pH, which is common when you get pregnant, then maybe there will be a yeast infection. That's a breach in the first line of defense. Urine is also a form of first line of defense. So coughing, urine cleanses the urinary system. Defecation, vomiting, these are examples of defense. That's why please remember, if you feel like going to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. It cleanses your urine. You're peeing dirt. And if you don't pee, which we're going to study when we take up the urinary system, students always start going to the bathroom after they studying the urinary system. It's not good for us. Pee is ideal, what do you call it? Incubation, what's the term? Is ideal environment to cultivate bacteria. So people who hold their pee, like you don't like the rest area, let's go to the next rest area. It says next rest area 60 miles. I'm going to hold my pee. While you're holding your pee, you're promoting growth of germs. So then after a while, you're going to end up maybe with UTI. So it's not a good thing. You're going to see why, okay? Then if there is a breach, let's say there's a cut in your skin, what happens? Now we go to the second line of defense. The second line of defense are your cells. There's inflammation plus substances. These are mainly protein substances. We're going to talk about this one, okay? So again, this one, first skin, then secretion, lining. Then when there's a breach, then you encounter your soldiers. But these are the non-special forces. I call the third line of defense my special forces. These are just the regular, uh, regular military. Okay. So let's look at our typical white blood cells. You know these neutrophils. You know them, right? Eosinophils. They're mainly phagocytic. Then you have inflammation, which is a second line of defense, fever, then you have antimicrobial substances. So let's look at some second line of defense. Number one, interferons. Interferons. So what are interferons? Interferons are proteins. See, they are antiviral or antibacterial proteins. So let's say this is your host cell, like your skin cell or any cell that has been infected by a virus or any germ. Look at this cell is going to die. It's infected already. But it can do something. What it can do is it can start making what you call interference. See? Interference released by the virus infected host cell. So it started making interference, which is this protein. It's a protein, which starts to alert the neighboring cells. When they see this, it's like a message that they receive from this. This cell is dying. So his last words is, please be careful. So this interference is like a message received by the healthy cells so that they understand that there's problem, that there's this enemy forces. So what then this will do, because it received this message, it will start making antiviral proteins to protect it. So even if there's the bacteria, it's already prepared. You understand? That's why it's called interference. It interferes with further spread of germs. I just call them germs. By the way, you know the difference between antigen and pathogen? You know that an antigen is anything that is not self. So when you receive blood that's not properly matched, it's an antigen. Anything, germs, or when you get a tissue transplant, it's an anything that's not yours is an antigen. Once that antigen causes an illness, then you change that name. It becomes pathogen. You understand the difference? They're both the same. They're both foreign. Except when you start getting sick, then you call it pathogen. You understand how interference help? So they inhibit viral or bacterial infection. Yeah, you heard of gamma interferon, interferon alpha, interferon beta. So this one inhibits viral, the gamma against bacteria. But this is what they do. You understand this? To interfere. The other type of second line of defense is called the complement system. What is this? This is nothing but proteins. So see how important your proteins are? So in your body, in your circulation, you always have what you call complement proteins. This C1, C2, C3, C5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? They are in their inactive form. We always have these proteins in our body. They're always circulating, inactive. But in the presence of antigens, this complement can get, and it's a cascade, you see? You activate C3, becomes C3A and B, and then it then activates C5. You don't need to memorize this, but do you understand? You follow? One more time. In your blood, you always have this, what you call complement proteins. They are proteins. They're inactive. But in the presence of pathogen, then they get denatured. They change their shape. When they change shape, they become active, and then it's a cascade. The result is here, this one. See, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They form a what you call a complex. They group together, and they form what you call membrane attack complex. MAC, like a thumbtack. So they group together like magnet. They become they join together, forming like a pin, and they push themselves into the cell membrane of the pathogen or the infected cell. So what do you think? If it's a pin, you burst the bubble, right? That's the same thing here. It will cause cytolysis. Won't that kill the germ or your infected cell? So then the infection ends there. No more spread. You understand? Is this a cell? No. It's just proteins. When they get activated, they get attracted like a magnet, and then they form like a pin, like Transformers or the Power Rangers, right? Power Ranger. Then they get together, form a pin. You understand this membrane attack complex? Another way that the complement system helps us is by what you call opsonization. So what this complement system does, who eats toast? You like toast? Do you like butter on your toast? It tastes yummier, right? When there's butter on your toast. So this is a phagocyte. You know your phagocytes, the neutrophils, phagocytosis. So they eat. But sometimes they're picky. So what these complement proteins do, look at, they butter the uh, bacteria, making it tastier, more attractive. So the appetite of your phagocytes is increased. So they eat. That's exactly what the way it's described in the Holmes anatomy and physiology, making it tastier, like buttering it. You understand? So that's what you mean by opsonization. Opsonization is encouraging or see enhancement of phagocytosis by coating it. That's another way that complement helps to provide second line of defense. So you know this membrane attack complex, opsonization. Another way that complement helps is by promoting inflammation. So this complement right here encourages or enhances the activity of your basophils. Remember, basophils release histamine and heparin granules, which promote swelling or inflammation, which is very good to increase the permeability and activity of your white blood cells. So that's how second line of defense helps. You understand? Opsonization, membrane attack. What are these complement? It's nothing but proteins. Okay? Another type of second line of, so here are your phagocytic cells, by the way. Your monocyte, macrophages, neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils can be phagocytic. A mast cell is nothing but a basophil that has secreted its granules. Dendritic cells, you're going to encounter other phagocytic cells. When we get to your lungs, they're called dust cells. In your liver, they're called Kupffer cells. Okay? So, another type of second line of defense is inflammation. And we studied, you know how inflammation helps, right? There's going to be swelling. There's going to be release of heparin. Because when there's swelling, there's increased chance for your white blood cells to get there. But when they get crowded, there's a possibility that they will cause a clot. So that heparin prevents that. And that's when you have that redness, that swelling. Whenever you see swelling, that's proof that you have a healthy working immune system. What other way that second line of defense helps you or protects? Fever. Fever. Your hypothalamus is your thermostat. You know that. But every time there's an infection, so actually my infected, let's say I have a boo-boo right here, my infected cells, including my white blood cells, they release what you call pyrogens, like pyrotechnics, the fireworks, pyrogens. You understand? I have a boo-boo here. My injured cells secrete a chemical called pyrogens. And also my white blood cells secrete pyrogens. The pyrogens go to my hypothalamus. The hypothalamus responds by resetting my thermostat a little bit higher. So I run a fever. What's the advantage of running a fever? You cook your germs. Isn't that what we do? We boil water or we cook to kill the germs. And we know that the germs, the mesophils, they're the ones that have that survive on our normal body temperature, and that's the ones that can cause infection. If we increase our temperature, you're going to kill them. They're going to die. But there's a disadvantage to fever. Increased temperature increases metabolism. You get tired. That's why when you have a fever, you're weak, right? Number two, increased metabolism also increases the energy, the use of energy. So yours, and plus your white blood cells need all that energy, so you're more prone for collapse. So you want only low grade fever. Very high fever can also increase activity of every part of your body. So you'll end up with convulsions, so seizures, because you're increasing the activity of even your nerve cells, your normal cells. So that's another type of second line of defense. Okay? And then and before we get to the third line of defense, I want you to understand the word antigen presentation. Okay? To get to understand our third line of defense. Okay. So this white blood cells, remember your neutrophils, your eosinophils, your phagocytes. Yes, what they do, once they have increased their appetite, they will eat the bacteria. And what they do, these are just your non-special forces. They will have to call on your special forces. To do that, they spit out. They always send messages. All your body cells, they talk to one another. How do they call your special forces? They call your special forces by what you call antigen presentation. You understand so far? So my first line, my skin, there was a breach. Now comes my second line of defense. I have my proteins. We talked about the complement proteins. We talked about fever. We also talked about our phagocytes, our typical white blood cells, our neutrophils, eosinophils. So they get called. So what do? They eat the germs. So the germs are in here. But as they eat the germs, they're also going to present part of that germs, the antigen. They're going to present it out of their on their cell membrane to be seen, by the third line of defense. So the third line can see that there's something going on. The third line of defense are your lymphocytes, your B lymphocytes, and your T lymphocytes. But I want to get to this part. How do they present? This is called antigen presentation. Okay? How do they present this pathogen? The way they present it, they don't just bind the antigens on any part of their cell membrane. Look at this picture over here. This is a white blood cell. Let's say this is a neutrophil or an eosinophil. Are you following so far? So they ate the pathogen. Then look at, just like when you go to the super buffet, Have you ever eaten at the buffet? You ever seen some people there coming out with a toothpick sticking out? That's like they have the toothpick. That's proof that they enjoyed their meal, I guess. Right? That's the same thing here. Look at your neutrophils. It ate, then there's a toothpick. See? So that toothpick is bearing, see, is part of the bacteria, the germ. See? It's showing part of the pathogen to whom? To your third line of defense. That's what you call antigen presentation. But the question is, where is it sticking out, that toothpick? Is it anywhere on the cell membrane? No. You know that there's parts here for entry and exit of your glucose, insulin. So it's not anywhere, okay? It binds the toothpick to this protein. That's called your MHC protein. Remember that. That's going to come out even in your final exams. MHC protein. You Are you familiar with this one? Major histocompatibility complex. Okay. So the MHC proteins are the, you remember we talked about how we identify your cells. You have your own ID tag for the your red blood cells. It's called the A antigen, the B antigen, right? Here it's called the MHC proteins. In any other cell, it's called MHC proteins. Okay. So you have two types of MHC proteins: MHC1 and MHC2. So MHC1 proteins are the proteins. Oh, let's go MHC2 proteins first. The MHC2 proteins are the proteins where the proteins of your white blood cells. So all of these phagocytic white blood cells, what they have are MHC2 proteins. Every other cell in the body, they still present the antigen. They present it on your MHC1 proteins. One more time. So let's say there's an antigen right here. Okay. Then this is a monocyte. It's going to process that and eat it. And then once it processed it, it has to present it to the third line of defense, which is your B cells and your T cells. To present it, it has to present it to a protein right here. What do you call it? MHC. Because this is a white blood cell, what is that MHC? The MHC2. So the white like that, so you see there's too many bars, so I'm going to say MHC2. All other cells, let's say I have bacterial endocarditis, so in my endocardium of my heart, they're also presenting, or mitral valve prolapse. So I have bacteria on the mitral valve. So the mitral valve is not a white blood cell, but it has germs there, the streptococcus. So it's gonna present. So if this is a typical, here, like right here, see. So this is a phagocyte antigen, and this is an antigen presenting cell. So this must be a neutrophil or an eosinophil. So look at, it's gonna present it to its MHC2. But if it is, let's say, a typical skin cell, this is just a skin cell, or my mitral valve cell. Look at where it's going to present it, MHC1. The point is, you can't just present it anywhere on your cell. The cell membrane has many functions. Some of the proteins here are for exchange, you know that, for entry of your glucose, for sodium potassium transport. So you have some that's devoted for your presenting. So this is how you identify your own cells. You understand? So once it has presented, see, it's going to present it to whom? To your third line of defense. Your third line of defense is your last defense and most effective defense. This is the last and most effective line of defense. Let's have another break and talk about the third line of. Then you're